Hi there, I'm the_twig. I would say welcome back, but this is my first public video. I would also put a long intro here, but I don't have the subscriber count to monetize, so what's the point? So, ONE D&D just had its second Unearthed Arcana Expert classes, and there's a bunch of major changes in there. Rogue lost reaction sneak attacks, Ranger got concentration-free Hunter's Mark, and the College of Law got absolutely massacred. I, however, have barely discussed any of those, because holy crap, the light weapon property changes are insane. They have led to a potentially brilliant piece of balancing, a whole bunch of blatant rules abuse, and even a logical loop. I just want to get all of this stuff off my chest, so here's a slightly over 20-minute video exclusively about the light weapon property and the various interactions it now enables. Also, please note for this entire video I'm going to be ignoring the fact that you can drop items and you have an object interaction. I have no idea how those are going to work in ONE D&D, and given how the attack action changed, I think they might too. Let's start by just reading the light weapon property. When you take the attack action on your turn and attack with a light weapon in one hand, you can make one extra attack as part of the same action. That extra attack must be made with a different light weapon in the other hand, and you don't add your ability modifier to the extra attack's damage. You can make this extra attack only once on each of your turns. For example, if you take the attack action on your turn and have a short sword in one hand and a dagger in the other, each of which has the light weapon property, you can make one attack with each weapon, but you don't add your strength or dexterity modifier to the damage roll of the second weapon. The big thing here is obviously that what used to be called two-weapon fighting no longer requires you to use a bonus action. There are also some more subtle changes. Two-weapon fighting used to say you can use a bonus action to attack with a different light melee weapon that you're holding in your other hand. This has been changed to that extra attack must be made with a different light weapon in the other hand. This allows you to use the light property of ranged weapons as well, and also enables some blatant rules abuse, but more on that later. Next up, I want to have a look at the two feats related to the light weapon property. First up, fighting style, two-weapon fighting. The first thing to note here is that it's a first level feat, so you can take it as the free feat that you get with your background, as long as you're a warrior class. You can't take this with the ranger, however, because they only become able to take fighting styles at second level. Fighting style, two-weapon fighting says, when you make the extra attack of the light weapon property, you can add your ability modifier to the damage of the extra attack. Whilst the wording is slightly different due to changes in the light weapon property, as far as I can tell, this is functionally identical to the 2014 PHB. That's absolutely fine. Two-weapon fighting is honestly a perfectly acceptable fighting style. I would have liked to see a slight buff to put it in line with dueling, but it's good enough. Next up, dual wielder. In the 2014 PHB, this allowed you to use non-light weapons and gave you +1 AC. It also allowed you to draw two weapons, but unless you were playing with an actual arsehole of a DM, I expect that never came up. The problem with the 2014 dual wielder is that it was honestly just worse than taking +2 dexterity for most two-weapon fighting builds. A non-light weapon turns your D6 weapon into a D8 weapon, which increases your average damage per hit by 1, but also increases your weapon's variance, which is mathematically a bad thing. 1d8 is generally worse than 1d6 plus 1. Getting +2 dexterity gave you that 1d6 plus 1, and gave you +1 AC if you wore light armor, and gave you +1 initiative, and gave you +1 dex saves, and gave you +1 stealth, etc, etc. So, how did they change it? Well, first up, it's a 4th level feat, and it now says, you master fighting with two weapons, gaining the following benefits. Ability score increase. Increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Enhanced dual wielding. When you are holding a weapon with a light property in one hand, you can treat a non-light weapon in your other hand as if it had the light property, provided that weapon lacks the two-handed property. Quick draw. You can draw or stow two weapons that lack the two-handed property when you would normally be able to draw or stow only one. +1 strength or dex is nice, but all 4th level feats, even things like Warcaster, are half feats now, so it's not actually a buff in relative terms. Enhanced dual wielding is a full-on nerf. Rather than both of your weapons being non-light, now only one of them is. Amusingly, it actually closes the rules abuse that I'm going to talk about later, which means that using a non-light weapon is actually worse than using a second light weapon. They just completely got rid of the +1 AC, no idea why they did that. And finally, quick draw is now a pointless feature due to changes in the attack action, which I'll be talking about next. In summary, this feat is now even more worthless than it was in the 2014 PHP. Do not take it ever. Legitimately, Savage Attacker might be stronger, assuming that the +1 doesn't increase your ability modifier. Now for the final part of my preamble before I start breaking things, the attack action. There's a few changes here, one of which is very subtle but extremely significant. The attack action now reads, when you take the attack action, you can make one attack with a weapon or an unarmed strike. Equipping weapons. You can equip or unequip one weapon before or after any attack you make as part of this action, even if the attack is with an unarmed strike. Moving between attacks. If you move on your turn, you can use some or all of that movement to move between the attacks of this action if you have a feature such as extra attack that gives you more than one attack as part of the attack action. So, first buff, the equipping weapon section. I expect this was designed to enable throwing weapons builds, however it also completely eclipses the quick draw feature in the dual wielder feat, making it redundant. Additionally, it enables something that I've taken to calling weapon juggling, which I'll be talking about in a bit because it's absolutely rife for abuse. The other, much more subtle buff is that the attack action now says you can make one attack. In the 2014 PHP, this said you make one melee or ranged attack. What this means is that you can now take the attack action and then use any features that require you to have made an attack action immediately before making your attacks. An example of this is Flurry of Blows, which I'll be talking about later. So I mentioned something called weapon juggling earlier. This is basically an abuse of the equipping weapons section of the attack action to enable some pretty interesting cheese. This is kind of annoying to explain, so I'm going to use an image to help. Here's a guy. They're a 5th level fighter, so they have extra attack. These two boxes will show what's in their left and right hands respectively. Some of the more pedantic amongst you may notice that because they're facing us, their left and right hands are on the opposite side. Guy declares a direct attack against me, activating my trap card, Mirror Force. For those of you who are going to continue to be pedants because Mirror Force should destroy them, I don't know, Book of Moon? Anyway, the two boxes show what's in their hands, and I'm also going to be calling out the hands. For example, they now have a left short sword. For the purpose of these examples, please assume that every single short sword is a different short sword. Guy just has 50 of them in their pocket. So, Guy enters combat with a left short sword. On their turn, Guy will use the attack action and then make an attack with the left short sword. As a part of the attack, Guy will then unequip the left short sword. As Guy's second attack, Guy will draw a right short sword and then attack with it. So why has Guy done this? Well, they made their first attack with a light weapon in one hand, and they now have a different light weapon in the other hand. This qualifies Guy for the third attack with their right short sword using the light weapon property. At no point does the light weapon property say that you need to be holding both weapons at the same time. Why is this relevant? Because all three of Guy's attacks qualify for fighting style dueling. Let's give fighting style dueling a quick read. Like with fighting style 2-weapon fighting, it's a first level feat so you can take it with your background. And you could even take both of them if you're a human. Dueling reads, when you are wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain a +2 bonus to damage rolls with that melee weapon. Again, slight rewording from the 2014 PHP, but functionally identical. Anyway, because Guy was 2-weapon fighting, and they also only ever made an attack while they were wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, they can benefit from both 2-weapon fighting and dueling. At this point, I'm going to step back for a moment and look at some damage calculations. As far as I can tell, the 3 optimal melee weapon loadouts at 5th level are short swords, with the 2 fighting styles I've already mentioned so far, a great sword with fighting style great weapon fighting and the great weapon master feat, and a pike with fighting style great weapon fighting and the polearm master feat. I'm not going to go over how those feats have changed, because this is already long enough for a video about 126 words, which most people probably glanced over and thought, neat. All of these calculations are performed with a +4 modifier and assume a 60% chance to hit on each attack. In this first set, we can see that the short swords are pretty much on par with the pike, but a little bit behind the greatsword. If we apply advantage, same story. What if we add the ranger's hunter's mark? This adds damage on each individual attack, so it favours the additional attacks of the shortswords and the pike. Sure enough, shortswords are now in the lead. If we apply advantage, all 3 weapon loadouts have 0.3 damage per round between them. That's insanely tight, and means that all 3 loadouts are viable. Shortswords have the lowest variance and also leave your bonus action free. Greatsword has the highest max roll and the most devastating crits, and Pike has the Polar Master reaction. I think this is an amazing piece of balancing work, although I do expect it was probably unintentional. I think that it's pretty clear that this weapon juggling is not by design. You probably should not be able to use fighting style dueling with light weapons. Unfortunately, I think it might be quite hard to close this loophole because of hand crossbows. I just want to quickly go over the dual wielding part of the crossbow expert feat. It says, dual wielding. When you make the extra attack of the light weapon property, you can add your ability modifier to the damage of the extra attack if that attack is with a crossbow that has the light property. So clearly the light weapon property is supposed to work with hand crossbows. However, because hand crossbows also have the ammunition property, you need to be able to make the additional attack while only holding one weapon. It simply doesn't work otherwise. I expect that wizards will probably change the wording in the light weapon property to something like, if you make an attack using a light weapon while holding a second light weapon in the other hand, you can make an additional attack with that second weapon. However, even this means that only one of your attacks can't benefit from fighting style dueling. Now, you might be wondering why I've been doing all of these at 5th level when you can get all the fighting styles and weapons right at 1st level, assuming you're playing a warrior class. Well, that's because of the previously mentioned logical loop in the equipping weapons section of the attack action. Let's bring Guy back. They were hit by a 1st edition Black Dragon and lost some levels. I think that's a thing. I've never actually played 1st E. Anyway, they're now a 1st level fighter with both fighting style, 2-weapon fighting, and dueling. As before, Guy is going to enter battle with a left shortsword. They're going to take the attack action, attack with the left shortsword, then unequip the left shortsword. Now, can Guy make a second attack using the light weapon property using a right shortsword? They can make an attack if they draw their right shortsword, but they can only draw their right shortsword if they make an attack. Neither can be done before the other, so Guy is stuck in a chicken and egg loop. I think that this means that Guy probably can't make a second light weapon attack. Obviously, Guy could just draw the right shortsword as part of the first attack and then unequip the left shortsword as part of the second attack. But in an example coming up, that's not an option. So, let's do some more breaking. I said earlier that I wasn't going to talk about the Polar Master feat, but I lied. Ha! Let's have a look at the Pole Strike feature. It reads, Pole Strike. Immediately after you take the attack action and attack with a weapon that has the heavy and reach properties, you can use a bonus action to make a melee attack with the opposite end of the weapon. The weapon's damage die for this attack is a d4 and it deals bludgeoning damage. This is a weird sort of side grade. In the 2014 PHB it read, when you take the attack action and attack with only a glaive, halberd or quarterstaff. And I believe it was later errata to also include the spear, although my PHB is pretty old so it doesn't have the errata. This means that you can no longer use one-handed weapons with Polar Master. However, it also means that you can use multiple different weapons. You aren't locked to just your Polar. There's also another nerf here, which is that you have to make the bonus action immediately. You can't spread your attacks out anymore, and you can't attack, move, and then d4 attack. So why am I talking about Polar Master now? Because you can weapon juggle to get light weapon attacks. Bring back Guy. They've done some grinding against Shining Poms and are back up to 5th level. Guy enters the fight with a pike. They take the attack action, draw a left shortsword, and attack with it. Yes, this is something you can do. You only need to be holding a 2-handed weapon in 2 hands when you are actually attacking with it. As Guy's second attack, they will then unequip the left shortsword and attack with the pike. Then immediately after, make the d4 bonus action attack and as part of it, draw a right shortsword. Guy will then get their additional light weapon attack with the right shortsword and unequip it as part of the attack. Guy then ends their turn with a pike equipped, so they can use the Polearm Master Reactive Strike reaction if an enemy moves towards them. Incidentally, Reactive Strike is no longer an opportunity attack, so screw you, Sentinel and Ghostlance builds. So, by weapon juggling, Guy just got 4 attacks in one turn, and has the Reactive Strike active. In this case, Guy always had a pike in their other hand, so they can't use Dueling. It would actually be possible to use Dueling, but it falls foul of the chicken and egg loop that I mentioned earlier. Instead, Guy will take both fighting style 2-weapon fighting and fighting style great weapon fighting. So what does the damage look like for this loadout? Well, as you can see, compared to the highest damage loadout from the previous calculations, Pike Juggling is the best in every situation. The fact that it also gives the reaction makes it even better. This, I think, is an issue. I don't want this in the game. It centralises weapons, and after 8 years seeing Great Weapon Master plus Polearm Master with a glaive, I don't want any more centralised weapons. It sucks. Fortunately, my if you make an attack using a light weapon while holding a second light weapon in the other hand, you can make an additional attack with that second weapon fix from earlier, does disable this. Next up, I want to talk about one of the biggest beneficiaries of this, the Monk. In the 2014 PHB, the Monk was probably the weakest class. All of you who think that the Ranger was weak seriously need to shut up, read Archery Fighting Style, read Crossbow Expert and Sharpshooter, and read the Ranger spell list. Ranger is, and always has been, great. The Monk gets 3 major things from this UA. Firstly, with light weapon property no longer using bonus actions, they can use light weapons and still use martial arts, ki, patient defense, or whatever else. Incidentally, I predict that martial arts will no longer require a bonus action either, which will make Monk a legitimately good first level dip. Secondly, unarmed strikes as a whole got a buff because they can now be used to grapple or shove, and grappling also got buffed. As before, I'm not going to go over those now, and I actually mean it this time. Thirdly, do you remember how ages ago I said that you can take the attack action and not attack? Well, that's actually a huge indirect buff to Flurry of Blows. Flurry of Blows reads, immediately after you take the attack action on your turn, you can spend 1 key point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. Unlike with Polearm Master, this immediately refers to the key point, not the attacks. To show you what I mean, let's bring back Guy. While they were away, Guy found Jesus and has become a 5th level monk. Since Monk is a warrior class and Guy is a human, they've taken fighting style, 2-weapon fighting and fighting style dueling at 1st level. At 4th level, Guy also picked up the grappler feat. Guy is going to start the battle with a left shortsword. On their turn, Guy is going to use the attack action and then immediately spend a key point to use Flurry of Blows. For Guy's first Flurry of Blows, they're going to attack with their right fist and push the enemy prone, which uses Guy's dex now. Guy will then make their first attack with the attack action to attack with their left shortsword, and then unequip it. For their second attack, Guy will draw a right shortsword and attack with it. Guy now uses the light weapon property to make another attack with the right shortsword. For their second Flurry of Blows attack, Guy will punch with their left fist, and thanks to the grappler feat, both do damage and grapple the enemy. The enemy is now grappled and prone, causing Guy's allies to have advantage on attacks, and the enemy to have disadvantage on attacks. Incidentally, if Guy missed the first shove, they should instead immediately use their second Flurry of Blows to make a second shove. So, how does this match up to everything from before, except for Pike Juggle, because Pike Juggle sucks? Well, it's roughly equivalent to a great sword loadout at advantage, except it also ends with the enemy both grappled and prone. It does cost you 1 of your 5 ki, but I honestly think that's worth it. If you run out of ki, you can always just fall back on martial arts, which lets you either shove them prone or grapple them after your first short sword attack. Finally, I want to end off with some speculation. I think that wizards are going to find a way to fix weapon juggling. Does that kill light weapons? No. They still don't use a bonus action and result in additional attacks, so characters who can stack up a lot of per hit damage will want them, such as rangers with Hunter's Mark, barbarians with Rage, or even some sort of multi-class that allows you to have multiple features. Additionally, I have another prediction. I think that in the warrior class's UA, there will be a feat called something like Power Attack, which will allow you to take away your proficiency modifier from an attack roll to add double your proficiency modifier to your damage roll. In this case, there would be 3 different lines for melee loadouts. Either Shortswords with fighting style 2-weapon fighting and Power Attack, a Greatsword with fighting style Great Weapon Fighting and the Great Weapon Master feat, or a Pike with fighting style Great Weapon Fighting and the Polearm Master feat. As you can see from these calculations, they are all roughly equal. Shortswords don't use a bonus action and are the best with advantage, a Greatsword has the highest max damage and the best crits, and the Pike has the lowest variance and reaction attack. Once again, I think that this is a really nice balance. It means that all 3 are viable, and means that I can stop being bored by everyone using glaives. Thanks for watching everyone, and God knows how I got all of this out of barely 2 paragraphs of text. If you have anything else that you think I should go way too deep on, let me know in the comments, and please share this thing around. I have basically no internet presence, and I think that there's a lot of stuff in here that should be fed back to wizards in the survey. If I'm the only one to mention it, then it will probably all be ignored. Bye!